Shadiversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad.
And greetings, I am Tyranth.
And so, there's a lot of McDojos out there, Tyranth.
There is.
Yeah, and it's related to the whole kind of mall ninja stuff, being, attracted to the Hollywood presentation of martial arts. And look, people have rightly called out a lot of the McDojo bullcrap, but there's also McDojo swordsmanship.
I want to be very clear about this. I don't mind. Like, I've seen people who do a lot more of the showmanship type stuff. I have no problem with it all.
Me neither, as long as there's a clear understanding that this is for show and it's not for practical combat or use. Yeah. That's the important distinction, and that's why the video that we're reacting to here, I think, is quite important, because the young lady clearly is really talented in the flashy stuff.
Yeah.
Her flourishes are top tier. But you can clearly see she's been kind of trained or was practiced in the for the presentational kind of performative,
the demonstrative stuff.
Yeah, the performative martial kind of side of things, and then they start to show how to do the strikes, and it seems like they're trying to present it as having martial validity in actual practical use, which is where we wanted to share some commentary that no, this isn't the case. But I think there is a side of it that she's also trying to show this is how you do it to make it look really fancy.
Right.
And in that side, I think she's right. Like, it's all about strong poses, strong stances and positions and stuff. And she's really good at that. But in an actual combative situation, this is not valid swordsmanship.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, because there's a reason why I love European swordsmanship so much. And that's because when you actually look at lots of different moves, they can look like montante. That looks like flourishes, but you actually break it down and you see all of them are actually valid strikes. You're always with the edge, you're spinning around. That's why I enjoy that style of swordsmanship so much. But then when I see these sorts of things, always with the katana, and it's always sort of, it's more performative, which is fine, but that's not practical, versus something like, let's say, montante, or just a bunch of different European stuff that is practical.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I love it.
I mean, when you start to incorporate reverse edge striking and stuff like that, the amount of...
beautiful.
It looks amazing. Now, you're not going to see reverse edge strikes because this is, katana kind of founded. Now, before we begin, this isn't to try and start beef with the people who this content or this young lady or anything like that. I think she's extremely talented. This is more an academic exercise on functional, real swordsmanship. Okay.
I haven't watched this video, so I have no idea what's happening.
They start off showing her some of her skills. Okay. And check it out. She's actually...
Okay, yeah, this is, yeah.
It's all flashiness, right? Looks great.
Yes.
This is like, I picture this type of choreography for...
It's like a stage performance.
Yeah, exactly. I get the training sequence of a super swordsman in a TV show or something like that. And in that sense, the flourishing, brilliant. I actually love that, right? And so she's clearly very, very talented, but even just that small thing there where she transitioned to the strike was not a functional move.
None of this is like combat functional.
Now...
Hi, I'm GNT, and today I'm here with super talented Megan Abel. What are you going to take us through today?
Today we're going to go through some basic sword techniques, our chops, blocks and strikes.
So see how it's presented there? They're presenting, these are the basic strikes, blocks and movements, where it's like they are presenting that, it seems like, as this is functional stuff.
How would you present it?
If I was showing this, like... Some of the stances that they show are actually good and strong in terms of structure, not necessarily for defense or combat. Okay. And so I was like, if you want to show some good structure, control, and to present it like in a flashy way, this is the stuff, right? But I wouldn't be presenting it as the basics of swordsmanship.
I agree with you, but I'm also having a hard time right now coming up of how I would describe it.
Describe this, or describe what the basics are?
Describe this.
Yeah.
Because it's technically, there's swordsmanship in it, but it's more performative. But there's also, like you said, there might be some valid things here and there.
That's the interesting thing, because we are not saying that you would get no benefit in a practical sense by trying to learn this moveset and stuff like that. Learning flourishes is a brilliant way to develop proficiency with the sword, which means you develop a sixth sense of where the sword blade is in respect to your body by practicing those movements so regularly.
But you're not going to use that in a fight.
No, but it helps out with your control and precision when you're actually fighting. And it can help out with speed. And one of the things that I do like is how firm her footwork is.
Right.
Not necessarily in the having the right leg positions in a strike, because I think sometimes she's overextending and the legs are in the way and she's not extending the blade to actually hit someone, but having stability in your stance, right? If you were to practice this, that would actually translate to getting more stability in your movements in combat.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hi, so today we're going to go over some basic sword chops and blocks. Now to start off with, before we do anything with the sword, we need to work on our stances. Now, when I'm doing my chops, I go into a basic front stance like this. Now I'm going to show you quickly how I would do it.
Now, in combat, that type of stance you would adopt after you've extended into a strike, but for a basic beginning stance, you wouldn't adopt that. It's too wide open, you're presenting your forward leg too forward, it's too much of a target. She has good stability and structure in that sense. And in that sense, what she's saying is valid.
Stance.
And
now,
she has quick
those who don't
movements
know how to
between
do a front
stances.
Stance, how we're going to do it is we're going to start with our feet together. I want you to bring your legs shoulder width apart. So I'm going to bend my front knee, straight my back leg. Now
But
you don't
see,
want your legs.
this shouldn't be considered a standard sword stance with your footwork.
No, it's not.
Too far
But she's
out to
kind
the
of-
side. You don't get too narrow here.
She's kind of mentioning
like off balance. So think
ending
yourself,
in that
bend your front
stance
knee
after
to the
striking.
point you cannot
But then
even
why
see
would
your
you
own
start
toes.
with it?
Then you're going to put
So
your
that's
back
the-
leg,
that's the
remember,
question.
shoulder width apart, back leg straight, back foot diagonal in this position, okay? Now, to transition from each one, all we're going to do is we're going to go to this position. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to switch.
See,
my
this is a
hips
very
as fast as I
martial
can
art,
and step my back
Very-
demonstrative
to the side. So from here,
sword stuff.
Yeah, and see, just
Especially
that
that,
transition right then is made to kind of convey impact and speed of movement
Yeah.
and stuff, and it's more visually impressive, but that's not necessarily how you'd move when you're fighting, because what she ends up doing, right, is she transitions between that stance while striking, and so this is actually her forward-facing stance.
Right. Okay.
And you'll see that
Like that looks great on camera.
it looks great on camera, but
no.
in a combative situation,
I would
that
not use
forward
that.
leg is a primary open target.
Yeah.
switch. Same again, switch as fast as you can. We don't want to be doing over-exaggerated big steps, then as well when we're doing the sword, it takes out the speed. So from here, fast, switch, switch. Okay, so moving on to actually using the sword now, the first thing I'm going to cover is how to actually hold the sword. Now, as you can see, you have your handle here and the guard here. I'm going to hold my hand, one hand, my dominant hand.
Okay, so when it comes to grip, okay, there are multiple correct ways. There's not just one correct way, and different sword disciplines emphasize different ones.
Sure.
When I got to do a bit of kendo when I was in Japan, they emphasized that the bottom grip was the tight one and the top one was a guiding hand, which was, Asian discipline. And I find it interesting that they're coming from an Asian discipline where that's actually not the emphasis that she's showing, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
Sure, but this is kind of an overtone of the whole video. Is what swordsmanship is this?
Yes,
You know? What
it's
discipline?
very modern presentational performative martial arts.
Yeah.
Which looks great, and there's competitions they can do some crazy
But
stuff.
keep in mind, this video is titled Sword Strikes and Blocks Tutorial Extreme Sword Basics Part 1.
Yeah, and presenting this as like fundamental basics. No.
And we're not saying go over there and like comment or anything like
No,
that. That's
no.
not what this is about.
This isn't a hate video.
Shad just found this and wants to talk about
I
it.
found it really interesting,
Yeah.
and it is actually a common enough thing that comes up where people think the flashy, cool factor gives validity to how practical it is, when it's not.
Hands at the bottom. So one hand at the top, one hand at the bottom here. Now the top hand, when you're doing any strike, is the pusher, and the one that's not dominant is pulling.
Not necessarily. It really depends on the type of sword strike. There are multiple sword strikes where you pull both in.
See, that's the thing, is that is purely more from like a quick, snappy, demonstrative type of...
But it really depends, because even when you're holding on, you actually can choose depending on what your preference is to the, I guess, results that you get in practice as well, that you might actually want the main lever point to be the bottom hand and you're striking down like that. In Kendo, it was like this. Strong grip, guiding grip.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But in European, usually it's a bit of the reverse.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's not just, so this is the one way. And then you have the point of leverage where this can be the lever point and you're rotating on that point, or this can be the lever point and you're rotating there.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are rotational strikes and leverage strikes. And it's just interesting that even in the basics, there's a lot more nuance than what they're presenting.
The sword. So as you can see, when I'm doing any strike here,
And this is also very dependent on sword as well. Like,
Yes.
see, a bit of an issue here is like if I pick up a rapier.
The sword.
Yes,
Like-
completely different beast.
This is 100% different, and this is just sword strikes and blocks.
But even on a
Sure,
katana, there are different disciplines and philosophies on just the grip.
But you know me, I just use a katana one-handed like a
like
monster.
a friggin' barbarian.
It works, and I'm good at it.
It's so wrong. It's
If you don't have a sword,
But that actually does go into the other philosophy that I think too many people try and deride, is that use what works for you.
Yeah.
If you can make it work and it is working, right? Don't let anyone tell you it's wrong. It's like, if you have a preference for it and after practice it's valid,
Yeah,
doesn't matter if it is against what is traditionally adopted.
yeah, sure.
at home, you can use a stick or a bokken. We're going to do the same technique. So we're going to go into our stance. We're going to bring the sword or your stick up to your shoulder. We're going to cut across at this angle.
Would you call any of this basics? Like, because I'm just thinking, if I had to teach someone, if I was there with my friend and I'm like, I'm going to teach you some stuff, I would not start with any of this.
No, I wouldn't either. And the strike that she's doing, a low aimed strike,
Yeah, to the feet,
with a
basically.
hyperextended lunge stance, right, is a just invitation to be countered and hit in the head.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things you learn fairly quickly with European swordsmanship is that legs are a less important target and also a very risky target. You can still strike at them when it's open, but if someone has a guard and you decide to go for the legs, they just need to slip their leg, move back. I've done demonstrations on this multiple times when the reach is completely different and they're completely open in the head and you strike them in the head in
Keep in
response.
mind, she's just started with this video basically saying this is how our feet are and this is our first strike.
And this,
not even a guard first or even a proper stance, a neutral stance.
Not even a guard position or stance, and just going, this is a basic strike, when this is one of the more rare and vulnerable and risky strikes you would ever do in combat, where you would only really strike so low like that if there was such a clear opening for it. But if you were like starting out with a strike like this, you're dead.
Yeah.
If you're fighting anyone with any level of competence.
The biggest issue a lot of people have is when they go from here, they do a big swing. Okay, we don't want to be swinging it, we want it to stop at a level above our knee, here.
But why? Sorry. Sorry, that's just...
It's for the pose at the end of the strike. It's for the performance there. Like, when you're striking a target, you need to cut through the target.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to stop in between the target. And so she's saying, stop, basically.
Stop at your knee. That's just a funny sentence to me.
Yeah.
That's all.
Now, of course, there is overswinging, and you can overswing too much. But there are recoveries, like if you overswing, you can then quickly reverse into another strike. But you clearly always want to try and cut through the target. Right. Now, it depends. I actually think what she's saying, the target that she's referring to is actually in front of her. Well, sorry. In front of her towards the camera.
Right. Oh, okay. So I get what you're saying.
See, where...
Oh, that's, very flat on.
Very
like
flat. Because this is what kind of...
Is it though? Are you sure?
Wait for until she strikes, because... when she starts to go through it, she's attacking towards the camera.
Right.
And this is why it threw me a bit, because in regular swordsmanship, you would be facing or striking towards the angle of your legs.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be, standing more flat
You
on.
wouldn't be side on.
Okay, we don't want
But
to
watch.
swing it, we want it to stop at a level above our knee, here. Okay? We don't want to under-chop either, because obviously if it was realistic and we were actually fighting, you wouldn't under.
Actually fighting is...
So, from here, when I want to switch, we can do it two ways. The first way, we bring it up to our shoulder again and cut across.
So where would the target have to be then?
In
if
front
she's
of you.
In front.
Yeah.
And so she's presenting the angle of the stance now, pointing away from the target, which is now presenting a much wider target for the opponent. And it's funny because what this is essentially kind of, it's either it's flat onto her, or one target is over here, and then she's switching away from the target over there, like she's fighting multiple opponents, leaving herself out. And so this is not martially valid.
My advice to anybody watching this who doesn't understand what any sort of sparring looks, just type in like HEMA sparring and just look at your first thing that comes up, and you'll see two dudes having each other at a guard right off the bat. Huge
recommendation if you want to see some solid European swordsmanship displays and practice everything. Check out Federico Malaguti, I think his name is a great HEMA YouTuber on YouTube, and he goes through basics, he goes through sparring footage, and one of the better ones that I really enjoy his content.
So I don't know if I want to continue to critique this, because this is clearly not.
But they're presenting it as.
I agree, but at this point, all we're critiquing is their display fighting
as functional swordsmanship, which deserves a critique because they're presenting it as
sure. But we've already critiqued. Like, it's just the title.
Yeah, I know, and this is mainly this is actually the bulk of it, because now she just goes to show it chained together and then at different elevations.
Right. Over our head in a circular motion and chop down.
And like the whole over the head thing, that's only for visual flair.
Exactly.
You don't need a transition so broadly like that. In actual fact, tight transitions where you keep the hands presented forward, right? That's the martially valid thing. Like if you're going to swing your hands up like this in the transition, you're leaving yourself wide open. Like that's not a good transition for a functional stance. But if you're striking on either end, you would keep the hands presented forward and go bang, bang.
Sorry, I just skipped ahead. This whole video is just that.
Yeah, I know. We're almost done with this video. That's what I said. This is the fundament, and this is the basics of swordsmanship, right? And so
here. Now, when
this is what she basically presents, and then just does it at different elevations, chaining them together.
Now, all I think of is whichever shoulder I go to has got to be opposite to the direction I'm going. So from here, I mean up to this shoulder, because I'm going that way.
Now again, for the visual display, this looks great. Yeah. If you were just doing it for the looks, and Megan, we're not trying to cause any beef with you or anything like that. You're extremely talented, and we're not trying to get anyone to, throw any criticism or hate. We're just commenting.
I just think your video is titled wrong.
Basically, I think if this was presented as how to make visually impactful, performative sword strikes, there'd be no issue.
No problem.
Mm-hmm. Some of the comments are going to be like, wouldn't want to, face her in a fight and stuff like that. And I have
no problem with any of this. It's just I think this is titled wrong. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how good she would be in competitive sparring.
It doesn't matter though, because that's not what she's doing. So,
but if she tried to do this in competitive, like actual, functional swordsmanship, she'd get destroyed very quickly. Right?
Sure.
So going back to this one is like then she starts to just basically transition.
Switch. Okay, now remember if you want to do the.
And the issue is that this is presented as as basic sword strikes, when if you did this in an actual sword fight against any half-competent opponent, you would get thrashed.
Yeah.
And look, see this. This is, I'm sorry, but that is, from a functional perspective, mostly nonsense.
Yes. And there are lots of different schools of swordsmanship that you can do different things, but this is just like martial arts kind of cool looking stuff, which is fine. I just think it's titled wrong. Simple as that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's mostly this video where, like, if we skip forward, she then just basically chains them together and shows them at different elevations. And then throw some flourishes in there as well. Now, interesting, like, for a horizontal strike like that, depending on position, that actually could be a valid strike now. But it's in a hyperextended stance where she's starting out like that. Sure. Where if you were to end like that, at a more elevated, higher strike, that might work in some instances.
The angle of elbow.
The problem is your positioning is just, because your stance is like that, your positioning is just too open to really spar like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm done.
Lots of spinning.
No, I'm done. This is not swordsmanship. This is martial arts, cool stuff. Love it, great, awesome. It's not the sword basics, though. Let's be clear about this.
It is. There's one more. There's one more thing.
We're going to move on to a downwards chop now. This is one of my favourite moves because from here you can do a lot of techniques afterwards. So all we're going to do, we're going to start off, you're bringing the sword behind your head now from here.
So, behind the head, like
Yeah.
it's horizontal back. But so many high guard positions never have it.
Yeah,
like this, if you present this forward to opponent, is a straight stab to your face.
Yeah.
It's just...
Here, make sure you're not stopping it too early.
And they end up saying the exact opposite of what you'd want to do. Like you actually, if you're going high, you don't go. You stop it.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't need all that insane wind up to get a lethal strike.
all the way back.
But if you're trying to show a lot of movement for something that looked fancy, and the more motion, the more impressive kind of visual stimulation.
When I'm chopping out,
Yeah, you would do something like that.
And it's much more realistic technique. Now, obviously, you've got to remember.
And then she says it's a much more realistic technique. It's like, ooh.
See, well, she's admitting it. It's a much more realistic technique, admitting that this is not for real swordsmanship.
But she mentions it's more realistic by going so far back, which is not the case. And look, again, I think she is super talented in what she can do. It's just, as you mentioned, Tyranth, what it's titled as. And
it's just the title here, man. I have no issue with any of this. If people want to learn some cool moves and go out and train with a stick or whatever and do some cool Instagram, TikTok, whatever, I don't care. But Sword Strikes and Blocks Tutorial Extreme Sword Basics is not a good title for these sorts of things.
Would you actually call this swordsmanship?
I would probably put it as like stage performance.
Flourishing?
Yeah, sword flourishes. But even then...
Like I did mention, there are some benefits you could get out of training this. The issue is, though, if you start to translate many of these movements into real fighting,
Sure.
it's not...
But for example, if you're learning cutting, that is like you're learning how to cut, which is kind of different to just learning how to use a sword. So there's different training for different things. So I'm fine with this being swordsmanship in a general sense, but basic sword blocks and strikes, I don't think
It's definitely not basic, and I would never call it like functional, practical, actual sword combat,
And that's why I said right at the beginning, like, how would you title this? What would you call
sword
this?
flourishing, sword performative dance.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Or ninja skills, something like that. You know?
But when people hear ninja skills, they always say, because...
Let us know in the comments, guys, what you would title this sort of swordsmanship.
Because, out of interest, some of the comments. Always been a huge fan of sword. Learning them would be awesome. This will be very helpful to know when I start my new life as an immortal. My training has taken a turn for best thanks to this. It's what's interesting is how seriously so many people take this when they see it, because they see something flashy and impressive, and they instantly think, like when you're watching a martial arts movie, how tough would that be in real life?
Yeah. I think that's all.
So much good less in one video. So, as we mentioned at the beginning, huge respect for her flourishing talent and ability. Okay, she's very athletic and stuff like that, and I think she should be proud of some of the impressive movements that she can do. I don't know how well trained she is from a practical side, though. That's kind of one of the takeaways.
But keep in mind, you can do both.
You can do both.
You can do this and also be good with a sword.
I don't know how someone who knows real sword combat would say some of the things you're saying, presenting in such a way that this is the way you strike, when no, you simply wouldn't.
Sure.
And that tends to make me think that she actually hasn't trained much from the practical side of stuff.
Which is fine if you don't want to, that's fine.
Just don't present it.
Just acknowledge that they're not the same thing. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Leave comments down below what you would actually describe this swordsmanship as, like stage performance, concept dancing, whatever you want to call it. And yeah.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you in the next video.
Have a good one. Bye.